Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Party lines are getting wider and wider as the race for the Senate presidency and the speakership of the House of Representatives gets closer. Yesterday, the Senate President Bukola Saraki decried the politics around the process of electing presiding officers of the 9th National Assembly in Nigeria, advising political party leaders to allow members of the incoming National Assembly to decide who is best to lead them so that they can have stability. This statement was termed as intrusive by the opposition party, which has a majority in both the lower and upper houses of legislature in Nigeria. The APC, in a statement through its National Publicity Secretary, Lanre Onilu, has asked that Senator Saraki and other members of the People's Democratic Party should not interfere as far as the election of principal officers of the National Assembly is concerned, and that the position of the party remains that those positions that belong to the majority party belong to them. Joining us now to speak on this is Senator ENYINNAYA ABARIBE, PDP Senator representing Abia-South Senatorial District from Abia State. Senator ABARIBE, welcome to the morning show.
Thank you, Ruben. I'm glad to be here. Good
to see you again. First, congratulations on your re-election into the National Assembly, the Senate. This is your fourth time in the Senate. Big congratulations. But first, I would like to ask you, what is your take on this drama over the leadership of the incoming 9th Assembly and the APC, the ruling party, insisting that members of the PDP should just stay on their line and be content with the smaller positions and not seek the principal positions in the National Assembly. And then, secondly, I would like you to address the issue of the agitation launched by former Governor Juzo Kalu, that the Deputy Senate presidency should be zoned to the Southeast. He is just coming to the Senate. You are a ranking member of that same Senate. You are not interested, or you don't think ethnicity matters in this game?
Thank you, Ruben. Let me say that I've been in the Senate. I was in the Senate at the time that PDP had overwhelming majority, which means we always had more than the 73 people needed to give you a 2/3 vote in 2007 and in 2011. I've also been there by 2015 when neither party had an overwhelming majority, and that changed the dynamics. So with the dynamics that has changed, what is going on today, with all due respect to PC, they can be looking at the past. We're looking at the future. The Senate and the House of Rep, it's an exclusive club, exclusive only to those members and senators-elect. And it is only those people who will make the decision on the floor. And so when people come from outside and want to say, oh, this is what we want, it may be what you want as a party, but then on the floor of the Senate, something else may happen. And what we're doing as the PDP is that all the PDP members we've resolved to be on one block. So all our votes are going to be kept. We will now make the decision on the floor to decide who we are going to back for the Senate presidency and the Deputy Senate President, as the case may be. And anybody who is a senator-elect, who is ranked, can vie for those positions. That is what our rules say.
Yeah, but how about...
And for the matter of the Southeast, I'm sorry?
Yes, I was going to draw your attention to the Southeast part of it.
Well, for the matter of the Southeast, yes, the APC had decided that the Southeast is not an important place for the APC, and that has been seen all through the 3.5 years of almost 4 years of the APC. All they needed from the Southeast was the 25%, and from that, we could see that they don't take the Senate president. So we are from the Southeast. Of course, we support anybody who wants to make sure that the Southeast is put in the, within the things that happen within the country. And so if Governor Carlo is pushing his party to zone something to him, even if they zone it to the Southeast, when we get to the floor, we as the PDP will, in consultation with our party leader, decide what to do there.
Well, Senator Abaribe, the national chairman of the APC, Adams Oshiomhole, went further by saying that even committees will not be assigned to members of the PDP. You are currently the committee chairman for Power, Steel and Metallurgy. How do you respond to this? And then a follow-up to what was asked earlier. Are you throwing your hat in the ring? Because we do hear that the PDP might just be attempting those presiding offices.
Well, let me say that the national chairman of APC, with all due respect, was talking from a point of ignorance. The decision on who becomes what and who gets a committee assignment, either as a chairman, as a vice chairman, as a member, is a decision left to something called the selection committee. And the selection committee is comprised of all the parties. Usually when you have the leadership, that leadership forms the selection committee when the time comes. And so most of us who have been there for a while, we don't take what he says serious because we know that that doesn't happen. So if we put that aside, the question of the leadership, like I said, we're keeping everything close to our chest. And we're going to unveil it on the floor of the Senate on the day of resumption or the day of inauguration.
Well, let me ask you a question about INEC. I mean, you won the election in Abia-South with a very comfortable margin. But before the election, you were very critical of INEC. And then when now INEC has managed a process in which you managed to win. When you look back now, what's your assessment of how INEC has conducted the 2019 electoral process, and what do you think can be done to raise standards?
Well, we still feel that INEC didn't do a good job. And I need to correct something. I didn't win the election because of INEC. I won the election because my people voted for me. They are the people who did the voting. And so the margin and all those things didn't have anything to do with INEC. In actual fact, I had to go to do a rerun, well, not a rerun, a supplementary election, because there was a gap of between the voters there, about 40-something thousand, and my 28,000. And then you could see that in Abia-North, where there was a gap, also close to 20,000, they still went ahead to declare my friend Ojuzo, instead of asking him to go for a rerun. So you could see that INEC, in the same state, in the same election, had two different results that emanated from it. One, a declaration, the other one, an inconclusive assessment. So what that tells you that INEC still have not gotten their act together with regard to making sure that they follow their rules, the same rules that they applied. And we also saw that within the country with respect to, I mean, having humongous figures coming from the desert and then very low figures coming from the coast. And so you could, there's no way in logic, there's no way in terms of looking at the distribution of people all over the country that you can justify INEC's figures. And so that is why we feel that INEC still got a lot to be desired and did not do much, did not do much better than we expected them to do. Because everybody was taking the 2015 elections as a benchmark, and therefore we expected that 2019 was going to be much, much better. But what did we find? It looked like we have walked backwards, and that is not really so good for advancement of democracy in Nigeria.
Well, Senator, you and your party, the PDP, you're not new to party supremacy and imposition of candidates at any level, some successful, some others not, as well as zoning when it comes to leadership of the National Assembly. Let me just ask you, why do you think that the APC's insistence on some candidates is generating so much force? I mean, one time in the PDP, we had the vice president and the speaker of the House of Representatives from the same region. Why is this generating so much force? What is your opinion?
Well, let me correct what you said just now. You said imposition of candidates. I mean, I think we have left that behind. When you say my party is not new to imposition of candidates.
It did happen.
That is why.
It did happen, and that's why I said you're not new to it. It's all political parties do it at different levels.
Yes, but we have a political party that came into power promising to change the bad habits of the past. And if that same political party that promised a change turns around and does exactly the same thing that they had told the people that they were going to change, then you have the problem. That's why the problem has come. What is happening is that there's a contradiction now between what this party is saying and what they're doing. They're doing exactly the same thing that people were complaining about before. And so they turn around and now tell you, well, it was done in the past. That's not a justification. That is the point. And so when you see that, you say, why is it different? It is different because they made that promise that they were not going to do exactly the same thing. And they're doing it. And so why wouldn't you criticize them for walking back on their words? That is just the thing. And so when you now say, we should be used to it, of course we're not used to it. We're not used to people telling us one thing and doing another thing. That is not democracy as it is. If you make a promise, you keep to your promise. That is just the reason why everybody is like, what are these people up to? And so when we have this situation where you're saying, okay, people come from here and all that, also, you need to also realize that we have also advanced further. We have had an explosion on information, and people are far more aware of their rights. And so people now want to be sure that equity happens everywhere. And so the question of having somebody going ahead and, you know, riding roughshod over every other person and saying, this is what I want and I must get it, there must be a pushback. And it is that pushback that you're seeing, and that it now looks as if there is rancor everywhere.
Well, two quick things, Senator Abaribe. We keep hearing, you know, ranking members of the National Assembly, ranking senators. For the benefit of our viewers who may not understand this, how does this ranking order, how does it work? That's one. Two, the Christian Association of Nigeria has issued a statement saying that religious balance should be considered, that in sharing the various positions, the interest of Christians should be taken into account. How strong is religion in terms of how positions are distributed and balance is established in the National Assembly, particularly the Senate?
Well, our rules is very clear. We give positions on the basis of ranking, especially the principal officer positions. And this is how the ranking is done. It is done on the number of times. First, the number of times you have come to the Senate, in which case, if you have come second, third, fourth, that will give you a higher rank. Then the next rank after that is those who come from the House of Rep. So if you have come from the House of Rep and you are now a senator, you are higher in rank than somebody who has just come into the Senate or into the National Assembly for the first time. So you can now see the gradation of ranks. How many times you have been in the Senate, whether you have been in the House of Rep before you come to the Senate, and then whether you're a newcomer. So that is how the ranking is done with respect to ranking. With respect to the question of the Christian Association, I do not think that in the Senate and in the National Assembly we really look at that. The question of religious balancing doesn't come in when we are considering the matter of who becomes what. It is your competence. It is your capability. It is the way that you relate with your colleagues. It is the way that we see you having the leadership virtues within you that you're going to use to drive the nation. Because when we get in there, every senator is first seen as a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He's not a senator of a Christian or a senator of a Muslim. And so the question of that, I think that maybe the Christian Association of Nigeria were misguided to make that plea, because I do not think that that really comes. You would rather ask yourself this question. If you have to go for surgery, and this is the best surgeon, and you need to be there and you need to come out alive from that surgery, would you rather not go with the best surgeon and not ask whether he's a Christian or a Muslim or whatever? So what we do actually is to say, who is best positioned? Who has the best quality to advance the cause of Nigeria? And once we have that, I think that every other thing will follow.
Thank you for that clarification. But earlier on, we referred to Governor Jiuzo Kalu. Will you qualify as a ranking member for being a former governor, since the National Assembly seems to be the destination for
the resting place of governors? Well, I've heard that. But you know, I was a deputy governor, so I don't think the National Assembly has been a resting place for me. I've been there, and I think I've contributed my quota. Let me say this. I haven't been a member of the House of Rep. So he comes into the second category. I've given you the different categories. Yes. A number of times as a senator, more than once, of course. Then the second category is those who come from the House into the Senate. So they are seen as being in the National Assembly. And of course, the final one being those who are just coming into the National Assembly for the first time. And so you can classify him as coming under the second rank of the ranking order.
Well, Senator, the President has withheld assent for 26 bills so far passed by the 8th Assembly. A committee was set up to look into this, but the report, not much has been done with it. Is this something that the 9th Assembly would be looking at? Because some of the reasons given by the President is bordering on drafting, harm to existing laws, and duplicity.
Well, I guess that eventually there will be something. But, you know, what we did in the last, in this 8th Senate, at the beginning of the 8th Senate, was that we passed an amendment to our rules. Usually, any bill that is not assented to at the end of any legislative session, it dies. And so if you were to bring it up in another legislative session, you would now have to go through the whole process all over again. So we said that that was a lot of waste of actually man hours and manpower and everything that has gone into it. And so we decided that we should amend the rules a little bit, I think Rule 100 and something, I don't know it offhand now, to say that any bill that was not assented to that had been worked on, we can just bring it to the next Senate and simply do whatever correction needed and send it back to the executive. So I do feel that all these bills that for one reason or the other he may have said no to them, we would have to use that particular rule to bring it back to him for assent, as the case may be, so that will shorten the time. Otherwise, you will have to start de novo, start everything all over again. And that will just continue to waste everybody's legislative time.
Well, Senator Abaribe, I guess it would be correct to say there's been no love lost between the executive and the legislature in the 8th Assembly. What do you think is responsible for this? Is it personality differences, ego, or the failure of the presidential liaison officers, or what exactly is the problem? And how can we prevent this kind of friction in the ninth National Assembly?
Yes, there's always been this friction between the villa and the White House. Let me clarify this. We call our own place in the National Assembly the White House. And of course, we call the, the villa. So there's always been this friction between the villa and the White House. But I don't think that it actually has to do with the liaison officers or so. It has more to do with those who work in the villa, with the president. You see, this is what happens. Once there's a little rift, like we saw when President Bukola Saraki became the Senate president against the wish of the ruling party, the gap that was created was filled by certain gatekeepers. Now, those gatekeepers find it very difficult because they now have a position of influence. So anything that now happens in the White House, they will turn around and tell the president that, you see, these people are against you. If he sends a nomination, and for one reason you find the nomination not viable, and he said, no, this is wrong, change the nomination, they say, oh, don't mind this people. You see, it is because they hate you and all that. So those gatekeepers, all those people in and around it, are those who are actually causing the problem, and they are still there. In fact, what I am envisaging, and except I'm proved wrong, and I don't think, I've been here for quite some time, it doesn't matter who you bring as Senate president today, because today you have those gatekeepers there. Now, anybody you bring as Senate president today will come from the side of the legislature. And then when he goes to the president to say, this is what we need to do, A, B, and C, those gatekeepers, when they see that it's going to whittle down their influence, we said to the president, you know, these people, they've come again. Oh, they are doing this. Oh, they hate you. Oh, that. You know, and then we now will fall into the same situation that we fell into under the leadership of Bukola Saraki. Because what now happened under Bukola Saraki was that even for reasons that we are able to see, and everybody was able to see, somebody in the villa will tell the president that is being done against him. And then they will turn back to us and come to us and tell us, you see, the president has made a nomination, and you must confirm that nomination. If you don't confirm that nomination, it means that you are against the president, which never happened in all the other presidents that were there. Every president understood that the legislature also had its own job to do. And so we were always running into this type of problems. I think that the only way that you could solve it is to create the necessary synergy between the villa and the White House. And I will tell you how that synergy was done. Ruben, you were sometimes in the government. Every week, there used to be a meeting between the leadership of the National Assembly and the executive. And I think it included the party chairman. No such meeting holds today. Nobody has anywhere to meet outside of an official meeting place. And you cannot run a government that way. Because what happens really is that if a president, for example, needs to have some type of legislation done, his job will be to call the leadership in their regular meetings and now say to them, we need to do A, B, and C. We need to do this. How do we go about it? And then these people will give him advice. I think that if you go this way, that is the best way for us to go. He now comes that way and things will be smooth. But when you have a situation where the villa is detached, the White House is detached, anybody can stay in the middle. And whenever you come through, they will now deal in rumors and this thing and all manners of backbiting. That is why we found ourselves where we are. That is why you saw a situation where the head of EFCC was brought to for screening. And the same executive that brought him also brought an indicting report against him and said we shouldn't confirm him. Because whenever we're doing any confirmation, we ask police, we ask the DSS, we ask all those people, and DSS brought a report. What do you do with a DSS report that was brought? Do you throw it away? No, because they are the people that are supposed to do the background check. And so we now said, okay, so we send it back to the president. Please, sir, look at this matter. It's the same executive that it does it. And then the executive turns around and now says, it is because the National Assembly doesn't want to support or doesn't want to work with the executive. That is why we are returning the person that, I mean, you could see the anomalies there. I suggest that going forward, the best way that we can use to get this whole thing is a return to that meetings and all those synergies that used to, I think he used to hold either on Monday evenings or Fridays, as the case may be. Once you do that, then you can nip things in the bud. Then you can be sure that you can, deal with any gray areas and nobody can come in between the President of the Senate and the President of the Federal Republic.
Well, let me draw your attention to something else. Recently, one of the heads of the parastatals pointed out that when some members of the National Assembly visited her office shortly after she assumed office, that she was shocked that they were asking for money. They wanted to be paid for carrying out their oversight duties. Now, you have been in that National Assembly for a while. This is your fourth term. How does this work, this extortionist racket that we keep hearing about, in the National Assembly? How does it work,
Ruben, I really would like for you to withdraw that word, extortionist racket. That is not very fair to members of the National Assembly.
Oh, okay. Well.
I think that what happens, really, Ruben, the National Assembly does not engage in extortion. That doesn't happen. I've been there for some time, and I've been in different committees, and I've worked with different chief executive of parastatals and all that, and that they know that on the table, you bring everything to the table. What now happens is this. You find that some chief executive may have committed some malfeasance. And when you approach and say, okay, let us look into the books and all that, they run out and say, oh, he's looking for money. Oh, it's because of this. Oh, it's because I didn't give him. That is what we always see. And, well, we have tried to explain that the matter of doing your oversight, you don't need to be paid by people. It is your job. It is your duty. And every Senate president and every principal officer, they have always said to everybody, if you cannot do your job, if you don't have the capacity, then you don't go ahead to ask the parastatals or government agencies to provide it for you. If, of course, I say that I'm going to, let's say I'm going to Lagos to look at what TCN has there, and TCN decides that, oh, that they will put vehicles to make transport easier for you. That is not extortion. I never asked for it. You see, the problem is that there's just too much of, I would say, people making very bold claims against the National Assembly, and there's nobody to really push back and say that is not true. If there is a specific case or instance, then you deal with that person specifically, and we have our rules and the ways to do it. When David Mark was president of the Senate, I remember that he had to dissolve a committee on the floor of the Senate for a matter that came up on the floor of the Senate in this way. When somebody said that they asked for something, I said, no, I will not take that from you, and he dissolved that committee. That happens. So I can tell you categorically that anybody that says that, he must have to put it on the head of whoever is dealing with, not the whole Senate. And it looks like there is an ongoing program of extortion, like you have said.
Well, Senator, the proposed legal framework for the 2019 elections was not signed into law. The elections have come and almost gone, with Rivers State pending, but not without criticisms. In fact, you have described it as a disappointment. Perhaps is the 8th National Assembly still looking at this, or are you just going to pass it aside to the 9th Assembly?
I really don't know. That's a question that the principal officer will have to answer. But it left with me personally, I would say that we should send it back to the president. Now, we have seen the flaws in not signing that bill. The key flaw in not signing that bill is the question of transmission of results. And it was in that bill for results to be transmitted electronically. In that case, the human element in transmission goes away. But right now, what do you see? You saw a situation where nobody voted, and of course, you had results. How did that happen? If there were transmission of results, then nobody would have had. And then you saw a situation where at collation offices, like it happened in Rivers State, some military men now came in to say, we're taking every result, you have to rewrite it and then just announce what you have seen. So that will eliminate a substantial part of this human element that is leading to all these problems. And so I would suggest that President Buhari should look again at this bill and sign it. Let it be one of the things that he will have done for the nation going forward.
Well, Senator Abaribe, let me ask you a question that concerns you directly. You were one of the 3 persons who stood as sureties for Nnamdi Kanu, and that's the leader of the IPOB, Indigenous Peoples of Biafra movement. And it's been in the news lately. Do you exactly know where he is? Is he in Israel? Is he in the United Kingdom? Have you been in touch with him? And in November 2018, you wrote the Australian ambassador to Nigeria. You wanted to ask about Nnamdi Kanu's whereabouts. Did you get a feedback from the Australian embassy? Where are we at this point on the issue of Nnamdi Kanu and your association with him?
Yes, where we are now is that the case that concerns me with Nnamdi Kanu is the case arising from the bail. And Justice Binta Nyako in November had varied the terms of bail by asking us to bring the bail bond in cash, 100 million naira each, to the court. And so we appealed. And so in the last sitting, which was on the 28th of March, she granted us a stay of execution and also adjourned the bail case sine die until we have finished with the appeal process. So at the moment, for the bail matter, we are on appeal. Then on the question of whether I know where he is, we saw a video clip where he was praying at the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem. And so because he's a Nigerian citizen, and we needed to confirm whether the person that was on the Wailing Wall was him and all that, we wrote to the Nigerian ambassador there and said they should please confirm and let us know so that we can bring it to court. But we have not received any response. This has been about 5 months now, no response. And we're just waiting for the response of the government because the government of Nigeria also has a duty, to track its citizens everywhere they are. Then, of course, on the same day that we were also, our case was adjourned sine die, we also heard, because we left court and then they continued with the case, then we heard that they Justice Binta Nyako had revoked the bail. And Nnamdi Kanu's lawyers now also said that they are going on appeal. So where we are now, to say anything, is that we are at this appeal court for the bail matter. I'm not in touch with him in any way. I don't know where he is now. I have written to the Nigerian ambassador in Israel to confirm that is there. If he confirms it, then we will take the case to the court and said to the court, we now know where he is, because all these things are just speculations, and then we don't want to deal in mere speculation.
Well, thank you very much, Senator ENYINNAYA ABARIBE. Thank you for honoring our invitation. I'm sure we'll invite you again to the morning show. Thank you very much.